For the newly indoctrinated, Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files follows the story of a professional wizard in Chicago. We've started our podcast as a way to help break down the series' most important moments, characters, and lore. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.
Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 8.8, Dream a Little Dream, where we are covering the novel Grave Peril. My name is Tansenn, and I am joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
Hi.
Chapter 16. Dresden performs a tracking spell and manages to find Lydia in an abandoned building. However, the vampires Kyle and Kelly are also there and attack Dresden.
So apparently finding people is hard, especially if they don't want to be found. And, there's 7-digit figures on how many people go missing.
Is this a true one?
Every year in the United States. I was thinking about this. I'm like, this is one of those things where a lot of times, because you do see and hear, about authors, whatever, doing all this research. And, you learn at some point that, ER had all, these actual, medical advisors and, real doctors that, be like, you can't say that, that's dumb, that doesn't mean anything. And, here's what you would really say if someone was, having a heart attack and dying in your hospital, right? So I always assume that there's a certain amount of proper research that goes into. So I kind of take for granted, and this is a realistic enough sounding statistic to me. For him to throw out there, but every once in a while, I'm like, but there is always the odd thing where they're like, oh, I have no idea, I just, wrote something, and, that whole joke about, 78% of statistics are made up on the spot, and, things like that, where it's like, you know what, this could totally just be something random he pulled out of his butt, and I'd just be like, all right, yeah, sounds good, sounds totally legit, but it seems to me it probably, because, again, with the internet, it's probably pretty easy. I mean, back in the day, you would have had to, probably look up articles and census things and maybe even get friendly with some cops and be like, hey, how many missing persons do you have?
It doesn't sound like he's so friendly with cops.
Well,
just
not Dresden, but writing. Butcher might be.
Not anymore.
I don't know. But yeah, so no, I don't know. It's one of those things that I am taking a little bit for granted. It sounds legit enough that I'm willing to accept, but...
In 2003, 900,000 people went missing from the United States.
900,000?
That's only 6 digits.
Yeah,
it says estimates run up near 7-digit figures. Okay, this was what, 2003?
I googled 2003 because that was roughly the book.
Yeah, that's what I was just, that's just in the United States?
That's still a lot of people.
I'm not sure. I googled the United States only, but the article is not.
There you go. Either way, there you go. It's pretty much correct.
It's a fuck ton of people.
It's a fuck ton of people that go missing, and most of them aren't ever found. So, yeah, if Lydia doesn't want to be found, he might be completely SOL here. Mm-hmm. But he's hoping that she's still got the bracelet and stuff like that, because she did seem pretty freaked out and did want protection. So he starts being... This is where his practical investigator side comes in, and things that, don't necessarily occur to me on the daily, but he's like, she was at the church, she left in the wee hours, she was probably on foot, she didn't seem to have a lot of money when she left me, so aside from the cab fare I gave her to get there, she probably doesn't have a lot more money, so she's probably still on foot, so she probably could have only made it a few, I'm like, oh, well, this is all very prudent, and yeah, sort of practical, logical, oh, okay, so it gives him a starting point, as opposed to me, who'd be sitting there going, I can't drive all over the city of Chicago and look for someone, I don't know. But yeah, so assuming she didn't have bus fare or anything like that, so yeah, he heads basically down to that area.
Well, okay, I will admit, American trains are built different, but Canadian trains are very easy to get onto without bus fare. We don't have gates you have to go through, right?
A lot of times.
All of our platforms are just completely open, right?
It's pretty trustworthy until you come across an officer.
Yeah, there's
cop.
Peace officers who will do random checks, but even then, if you see your train pull past them, they're getting on the stop and you can get off.
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to. Yeah. But yes, you're right. It's fairly easy in around here too. So yeah, it's not like you see New York subways and stuff that are all underground with barriers and stuff like that you very obviously have to jump over in order to board.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure about Chicago trains, but
yeah.
I just I understand what does he always say? Occam's razor?
Yes.
Right, I understand that, but it also seems at the same point that it's also just he's being way too
Is that a mathematical term or is that just scientific in general? Just wondering. Occam's razor?
That's not a mathematical one.
It's just a general.
It's more of a philosophical sort of...
Okay, just checking.
Theory.
Because it does apply a lot to... If only you could see the look Jess was giving us right now.
Ever since we brought Matt into our life, I've been suffering.
That's not true. You suffered long before then. It's just easier to point out and make fun of now.
I just like to put it all on Matt now.
Ever since you learned how to count, okay, this has been a trauma in your life.
Yeah, it is. I point is that like he seems to be making a ton of assumptions for this, because I personally would I can't find a friend in a mall.
Yeah, right?
When I know they're there and we both have cell phones. Like,
well, exactly. So I'm like vaguely impressed, but I'm like, again, I don't know. Maybe this is just some kind of like familial limitation or something. But it seems to be like exactly. I'm like, he's just like, well, let's start here. And, you know, I'm like, it does just seem I'm like, it makes sense when he lays it out. You're like, oh, these are good points. That's totally logical. But
it's a good starting point, at least.
It is.
Even if she has gone further away.
Yeah, but that's just what I mean. Is just he sort of very quickly sort of narrows it down and be like, okay, this makes sense as a starting radius because of...
And he's cheating because he's using magic anyway.
Well, once he is, but yeah, to limit, in order to sort of get closer to her to you know, pick up on her signal more easily, right? It's you know, kind of like a metal detector or something. You know, the range is only so good at such a distance or whatever. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of fun. And then we get... I guess this must be sort of, well, other than his introduction to the beetle a little bit here.
Oh, right.
Because they were already, like, en route at the very beginning of the book, and then it got impounded. So here's where we sort of get our little, like, backstory to the beetle about how it's not really a blue beetle anymore, and Mike is mechanic, and blah, blah, blah. It's like the obligatory sort of, the beetle is another character in itself. So, you know, you meet Murphy, you find out that she's, like, cute and blonde and little and looks like an ant, not a cop. And then you meet Michael, who's like, you know, big and strong and you know, and this is the Beatles character description every book.
We've got even Mr. Like
the
cat.
Yeah, the large cat
really
with a stump of a tail.
Like, you really could start from this and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
For the details.
Yeah. Well, that's even just a little bit of like every book, right? As he gives you sort of the rundown on each person is they, right? But I love how like the beetle is sort of a character in and of itself, that it gets its own little sort of descriptions, and his mention to Mike, who can keep it running and doesn't ask questions about why there's a giant hole slagged in the trunk of the car and has to just have it replaced. He's like, just does it.
Yeah, how'd you burn a hole in there?
Yeah,
like, that's fascinating.
Doesn't ask. Just like, oh, your car's beat to shit and ripped up again with giant claw marks? Don't know how that happened. Don't
You're
care.
paying the
Sure it
bills.
was something yeah.
You know what I just realized I really badly want is a one shot. It's a short story of like the FBI or the police or whatever like that, or even the White Council just like interrogating Mike. And it's like, listen, and him just like fully just like not giving it at all, like
You're like, I don't
completely
know.
like even like the same thing as like Mac, you know, like just complete poker face, like I don't know, I paint the door, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, he asked me for a new door. I don't ask questions.
Yeah, exactly.
He paid in a golf ball nugget of gold.
Gold. I just chipped it. It's like A Knight's Tale was on a little while ago, and I briefly watched the part of it, and it's the same thing when they find the girl blacksmith and get her to like make the armor, and she's trying to be like, oh, come with me, and then whatever the prize he won was like a little statuette thing or whatever, and he's like, just take it. She just like takes it and like whacks it against the side of the cart and like breaks the head off and like hands the rest back to him and goes, something like that, just handing him this golf ball and like just kind of like chipping a chunk off of it and being like, here you go, here's your change, like
Good to go.
just you know, like a wrench or something. It's just like clunk. I know, it's one of those ones. See, that would be kind of fun. I would go for that. I'm like, it's one of those ones where, again, I'm like, I don't think I ever want like a full backstory on Mike. So I'm like, I don't want to know. I prefer just sort of having the ethereal whatever Mike is, and he just, you know, it's like I don't want more detail on him in some ways. But something like that, like, yeah, like a more present story where exactly somebody's trying to hide and he's just like,
Is it a blue beetle? I don't recall. Looked pretty green to me.
I don't know, I get a lot of customers. What are you talking about?
A lot of guys named Harry in Chicago.
Right?
So Dresden goes near the area of the church to try to look for Lydia, as he said before, and narrows it down. He enters a park and draws a chalk circle around himself to create a spell.
Oh, there's a little description here and stuff like that, you know, because it's starting to get sunset and, like, shadows stretching out, like, creeping fingers and stuff. He's like, good thing my subconscious isn't too, like, symbolically aware or anything, you know? It's like, yeah, right. Like, I'm surprised it's not, like, again, considering some of the shit you've seen, Harry, like, I'm surprised that, like, not everything is, like, you know? I'm like, I guess that's more of that wizard training of, like, blocking things out. And, you know, same thing, like I said before, like, you know, my kids were little. It's like, you know, if you start to think about all the things that could go wrong, it's like, I would never leave the house. I would never let my children leave the house. I would never let them get on a bus and go, like, you know what I mean? Like, right. And you have to just, like, not think and focus about that stuff, or you will become like, oh my god, the world is so terrifyingly terrifying, right?
I wonder if that becomes harder with wizards because they have the sight.
Well, when he actually,
So him for seeing claw-like hands, with the sight, he could actually see claw-like hands.
And that would always stay, like, exactly.
And so, like, being in real, like, without the sight, that's, yeah.
Right? I could blur the
him.
edges on a lot of that. I could be like, my kids were home in bed every night, and then all of a sudden my daughter's like, no, remember that time I didn't come home for 4 days in high school? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that at all. You said you were there. I thought you were there. You know, it's like you get to blur the edges and, like,
did I die?
Well, this is a real story.
Oh, I'm sorry. She thought I was kidding. She thought I was going hypothetical.
Jess.
You also did not notice.
Well, I was working. She was in high school. And I'd be like, hey, are you, like, on your way? Yeah, I'm just on the bus. And I'm like, all right, fine. Don't poke the bear. Don't anger the testy teenager. And then, yeah, apparently.
Do you know where your daughter is?
No. I thought I did. Apparently not.
Yeah. Shame face. Oh, dear.
I lived.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, they don't tell you this until, like, 5 years after the incident, so. But point being is, this is why I wouldn't get too focused on things, because otherwise I would be super paranoid and, like, never...
Do I keep my children safe, or do I just not even try anymore? Less stressful to just not even try.
Depends
on the children. I just wonder why the house was so quiet?
No, the house is quiet. I'll take it.
She hasn't left all the lights on in a couple days. That's awesome.
There's no slamming doors at, like, 1 a.m. when she thinks it's actually 7 in the morning. Anywho. So this is kind of Harry's thing.
I missed the whole Harry connection there.
We were talking about him blocking out his, like, creepy subconscious to the world, and how you do that in your own life so you don't become, like, agoraphobic and, like, never ever 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 leave your house. It's like you have to just sort of put aside a certain amount of that's out there.
So Dresden uses his own shield bracelet and a tuning fork in this spell, attuning it to the shield bracelet to find its twin. I thought that was very clever. I like that idea. The ding, ding,
yeah, right? Probably not my first. You gotta wonder sometimes. And I mean, I guess this is part and parcel of being, like, an author and why you do all these, like, writing exercises for creativity and things like that. But you know what I mean? I'm like, I probably could have come up with, like, a dozen different things to think of tracking, but I'm like, I doubt a tuning fork would ever have been one of them.
Right.
So, kudos for that little bit of imagery, creative, whatever.
I really liked it.
Yeah, it is. It's cool when you write, but I'm just like, again, of all the things that I would think of tracking down someone, that was probably...
Well, and tuning forks are just cool in general. They're really neat.
Yeah.
So he follows the humming of the tuning fork to an abandoned building with a white van with a drugged Lydia inside. Yeah. Of course it's a white van, because, statistically...
Pedo van.
Yeah. White vans are more often used by criminals. In fact, they've done... police pull over white vans more often than any other color of van, because it's so often that they're used for criminal activities.
I think criminals would figure that out and paint their van something else.
You think?
You would think. It's kind of like...
I think it's because it's a white utility van. Like, they're just, like, a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, every company gets, like, white vehicles so they can slap whatever on there or not. And I think But yeah, it's almost like you've gone so far to prevent it that's become the, so it's like, it's going to be like black van, it's like, nobody wants to drive around in a creepy black van. Everyone's going to wonder what you're hiding. So everyone goes to the white van now. Everyone's like, well, we know you're hiding something in the white van, so now everyone can go back to the creepy black vans until eventually it's like, it's just that pendulum. It's always going to be like one or the other. But, yeah. So at first he's kind of like, okay. And he kind of does the whole like, gun up, hide around a corner, come out, because he, like, goes up and he, like, whips the door open real quick and, like, shoves his blasting rod in, and then it's like, okay, there's nothing here, but he's all, like, doing the quick, like, I need to, but yeah, just finds a Lydia-sized lump, and then, oh yeah, sure enough, there's her hand flopping out with the blade, so then he's like, wait a minute, this was too easy. Well, actually, this is it. When he first comes up to the building, so he finally, like, triangulates on the building, and it's this big old, warehouse thing, and he's like, ooh, this is, like, a bad omen. This is, like, typical slasher movie, like, don't go in there. But you're right, he does have that moment where he's like, oh, shit, I feel, he's like, I should get some backup, I should go find a payphone, I should call Michael, and I think I said this before on the last one, but I just, more and more, I'm like, you gotta feel bad for Harry, like, there's just no payphones to go find anymore.
Right.
I'm like, he's literally going to have to get himself, like, a bat signal or something to, like...
2003 still. We're still 2003. He's okay still.
Well, obviously, because they're still... But that's what I mean. I just think with, like, every passing year now, like, how rarely around here... And I remember, like...
and he keeps coming more into his powers, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it even makes it harder to... Yeah.
How do you ask somebody to make a phone call?
Like, hey, just stay across the street, but can you call 55?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So anyway, so he has this moment of, I really should call Michael or maybe even, like, Murphy and get a couple of the guys.
He should have invested in carrier pigeons by now.
Maybe.
Those dudes can go fast and far.
They can, but what's he gonna do? Walk around with, like, 3 or 4 pigeons on his shoulder at all
Why
times?
not? He's already a weirdo.
He's got these giant, voluminous pockets he always talks about. Totally like some
already a
magic
weirdo.
trick where they pull out, like, 16 doves and a couple rabbits.
He starts wearing a top hat with a carrier pigeon in it.
I don't do hats. But wait, there's reason for you two now. It'd be even funnier if he just had, like, a little, like, pull string on the side of it and the top of it just flipped up. Like,
it was even better if it's like one of those clocks with the little like a front
thing. Imagine Murphy trying to get a carrier pigeon at the office.
Right? She's like, dude, you know how long it took me to get a fucking nameplate? Now you need me to have, like, a fucking window office.
I was gonna say, yeah. Just keep her window open all the time.
Little tip, 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 tip.
Murphy downstairs. Murph, yeah, there's a pigeon here for you. Buzz him in.
So needless to say,
I still think Harry should do carrier pigeons. That would help him out a lot.
It would be
At
fun.
least for contacting inside Chicago, which, to be fair, he very rarely needs to contact people outside of Chicago.
For sure. Like, like Michael and Murphy, people that hear regularly. Susan.
Yeah,
eventually let her know he's not going to
Alphas.
make this date again tonight.
Yeah.
It's like...
But again, like, and it'd be really cool because if
Susan
he's just
starts to have a unnatural hatred for, like, pigeons, every time it's like, what now?
every time I see a pigeon, I get broken up with.
Yeah, right? It's like you get canceled on. Fuck.
But still, like, again, like, I was thinking originally only 1, but then you said 3 or 4. But yeah, like, if they're, like, really well trained, they can, like, sit in the trees and just, like, slowly watch Harry or something like that. And he just, like, puts out his arm and one comes down and he's like, all right, bitch, I'm gonna write this on you. And he writes something down and then it, like, goes off and he's like, okay, cool, thanks.
So they're just going to
Goes on with his
randomly
day.
ride or
They just
fly
fly
around
around
the
him.
city until they find him again?
No, they fly around him all the time.
Oh, I see. They're just like, they follow him until he attaches something to them and dispatches them.
And yeah, and he's like, you go to fucking, like,
Well,
Michael.
okay, how easy is it going to be to sneak around? Here's Harry trying to sneak into a warehouse. And there's
With a flock of birds.
Okay, but here's the thing.
So not only would he have to...
They don't need to come in the building.
So he has to train these things to go to all these, to know that they're going to, like, Murphy's
Okay.
house or
Okay.
Michael's house. Or he
Okay.
has, I don't know how carrier pigeons work.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
he
know
has-
a lot about them. I
maybe
think,
he
like,
has
it's
one
one
that's, like,
pigeon.
trained for Michael's
It's
house.
one
that's
pigeon
trained to
per
go to-
location.
Okay. So this is where he has this block of... So not only does he have to train them where to go and, like, where to come back to him, like...
But
to
he's
his
also
house.
magic, okay?
Okay, but he also has to train them for, like, when they can, like... keep up with him and when they stay back and when they...
Okay, I've got a new idea.
Okay.
the little people. Toot and his friends. He just always keeps like one of them in his pocket.
See, that would be slightly better.
They could find him a little bit easier. They can go anywhere.
You could have a direct dialogue but I believe that
And
would
I don't
create
know.
its own
I don't
host of...
know if pigeons eat pizza. I don't know what you would feed a pigeon.
He'd probably try to
sure
feed it Coke.
They eat. Yeah, if this was Harry's pigeon, it would eat Coke and pizza.
Your animals are wildly mistreated. No, they're magic. It's fine.
Thanks to the world of fiction, it was like Mr. can survive just fine off of Coke and SpaghettiOs. Oh man! So Harry gets no backup because he has no carrier pigeons or fairies in his pocket today.
I'm just
And Mister's out doing his own reconnaissance for Harry right now.
Jim Butcher could have laid the groundwork now, and he could have had carrier pigeons by Battleground. Probably sooner. Probably by changes he could have had if he started now.
Maybe he originally had carrier pigeons, and
then
because of the butterfly effect, they're gone.
There's like
He did in another universe.
9 or 10 years
Back in
between
time.
now and changes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like he would have had enough time to be like a pigeon man. And he's magic! He could have done...
But then he has to also, that raises another point, he has to keep Mister from eating all these pigeons.
Well...
So how do you think Mister would have taken to a flock
Maybe
of
they're
pigeons
dual
moving
duty.
in?
Once they're too old to deliver a message.
Oh my god!
That's why he has so many. What's that?
It's his side hustle, Dresden's pigeon breeding.
You know in Shrek when Fiona starts singing, and she goes, and the bird starts singing back to her, and then Fiona hits a high note, and the bird just explodes when it tries to copy her. It's like every day Harry comes home, and there's like, another exploded pigeon, what's happening?
Well, where's he gonna host them? Because everything I've ever seen about anybody who ever has, like, carrier pigeons is they always have, like, a rooftop thing. Harry lives in a basement suite. So where on earth would he host all these poor pigeons?
Okay, listen, we're doing fairies now. And also, like,
So now he's just got a cage full of
carrier pigeons.
fairies?
Carrier pigeons, like, were enlisted to war, okay? They can deal with a fucking basement suite. All these fancy 21st century pigeons are too good for a basement suite. Back in my day, pigeons used to be in the war.
That's because back in your day, PETA didn't exist. So, you know, if you're not allowed to send canaries down in mine shafts anymore, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to send your pigeons to war anymore.
What's
Okay,
PETA's opinion?
carrier pigeons?
This is a
Good thing
particularly
we're a pet-friendly podcast. We all take very good care of our pets, by the way.
Yes,
Don't
we
worry,
do, we
Jessica
do.
has none.
Yeah, PETA's against it. That's not surprising.
So there goes that. Oh, man. I don't know where we are now, but all I know is that Harry has no carrier pigeons.
Yeah, Dresden's about to be assaulted by Kyle.
Oh,
Hampton,
yeah,
the
so
vampire.
yes. He knows he should, and yet he doesn't stop for backup because time is of the essence. And he opens the van, and there's Lydia, and he's like, well, that's convenient. And then he goes, wait, maybe that's
My spider senses are tingling.
my pigeon sense. Pitchy sense? That just doesn't work. So, yeah, just as he starts to go, wait a minute, this might be a trap. And then, lo and behold, in comes Kyle swinging. So at least he's not completely 100% blindsided. He's only like 50% blindsided. So he gets like knocked into the van, but he like twists around and like kicks him out, and brawl ensues. And
uses his fancy rings as self-defense against the vampire.
yeah, and I don't know. Is this the first time he's used it?
And I wasn't sure if this was the kinetic rings, how it was described, or if it's used in a different manner.
No, it is the
That it's
kinetic
energy
ring
or
because he does
he-
say that they keep a little bit back. But I feel like he's mentioned putting them on before or something, but I don't remember if he actually had cause to use them. I'm pretty sure he never used it in Stormfront. I don't think
so.
he did in in
Like, I think the only other mention of the ring is the one that he gave to Faith Astor.
Way back
and
when,
that was
yeah.
for glowing lights.
that was, yeah.
It wasn't like...
I don't know if that was, but yeah, he gave it
self-defense
to her
weapon
to
yet.
think of her good memory and stuff, and it made it glow. But yeah, regardless. So anyways, yeah, this might be the first time we've heard that Harry has this enchanted ring. So every time he moves his hand, arm, whatever, that kinetic energy, a little bit of it gets stored in the ring.
Yeah.
And built up.
Harry punched Parker in the face with his kinetic hand
Did he do that? Oh, when he broke his
when he
nose?
was trying to run away from the
Okay.
first time.
Oh, right.
Okay,
Right.
I was trying to think of the fight with the street wolves, and I just couldn't. But okay, there we go, perfect. So yeah, so part of his magical arsenal, he's got his staff, he's got his rod, he's got his shield bracelet, he's got this ring, so he can give an extra oomphy punch to things.
Would
when
have
he
had
needs it.
talisman, but
Would have had a Desmond's, but that's not usually, that was more specific to all the ghostly rampaging that was going on, not something he generally. So anyway, so he gives a couple of, so he kind of kicks Kyle, and then he gives him a whoomp with the big blast of, and like peels off half his human skin stuff because he batters him so
Ew.
badly, and then it's gross. Then he's like, I know there's like this black rubbery vampire underneath, but it's still gross to see it, especially when it's like half and half.
When it shivers.
At one point he talks about things like rippling under the skin, and he's like, even like, I know it's just wrong. You don't,
That gives me the chills right now.
Yeah. So they're going, so he's trying to, and then, you. I was like, well, that's original. Yes, me. It's like, and he finds out the hole, and he's like, where are you going with Lydia? And Kyle's just like, who? Which, again, you would think, like, presumably, and he's like, the girl in your van with my bracelet. He's like, oh, is that what she told you her name? Which is, like, I get there's, like, a hole, but I'm like, it also, like, I guess why part of it didn't have as much oomph to me, like, so I sort of get, like, at first when he's like, who, and it's like, Harry gets, and I feel a little bit like, because he's like, Harry's like, my chest paying hard, sharp, hot, as if something was broken, and I sort of assume that's, like, they're kidnapping this person, and they don't even know who she is, you know what I mean, like, it's just, like, that's how little the vampires care or see, like, it's not a person, it's just, like, I found a wallet on the street, like, but that wallet's name is George, and he's my best friend, it's just, like, what, who?
Well, see, and I took that as the vampires don't know that Lydia is linked to Dresden in any way. Because he was making the assumption that it was a trap.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, because they're like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Maybe, and that's part of it, but yeah, I always sort of read it as a little bit that, like, yeah, he was just, like, pissed off that they didn't even, like, she meant so little or something like that, that was why he was initially, but it could be either way, or both, and I don't know. But either way, he's like, her, and then Kyle's like, oh, that's not even her name. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, that makes a sense of why but at the same time, because he's like, oh, you've been used, Dress, and he's like, I got a shivery feeling again and narrowed my eyes. But I'm like, you knew when you met her, you said, hey, what's your name? And she's like, I'm gonna give that to a wizard, you can call me Lydia.
Yeah.
So it's not like we
not
didn't
chat.
know that it was not, I mean, it could have been her name and just not giving her full name, because we know your full name has more, but it would also seem pretty likely that she was, like, nothing to do with, like, a complete and total alias or whatever, So part of me is, like, the fact that he makes such a big deal, like, you've been used, and I'm like, no, she was pretty upfront about the fact that she wasn't going to give you her real name, so it's not that surprising that, oh, is that what she told you? It's like, well, yes, that's what she told me. But whatever the purpose of this, I'm just reading too much or too little into it, or whether there was some reason that it was, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, duh. But then Kelly gets in on the act, and she comes in to try and, not sideswipe, blindside, is that the word I'm looking for again?
Yeah,
I feel like I used that word too many times already, though, so.
So the prize attack. Ah!
Yeah, so his spidey sense starts to tingle again a little bit, and then Kelly appears. But she was a little...
She doesn't get him the first time.
She doesn't get him the first time, but she's all kind of like she's been feeding or something, like,
Yeah,
she's a little messed
all
up.
Dressed in white. How the description is she's all dressed in white, and that she's got little...
flecks, she's got little
flecks on
speckles
her.
of blood on her white cat suit, and then like a blood mustache. She's like, ew.
Yeah, ew.
So, I guess her diet's over. Or maybe this is her one meal of the day that she's allowed. I don't know. This is her Slim Fast shake that she just went. So he kind of has both of them or whatever, right? And he's trying to get answers out, and she's still whining about, she's like, let me have him, I'm hungry, and
Dresden tells the pair that the girl is under his protection.
yeah, I tries to get them to clear out, and they're like, not happening, and
they're really defensive of her.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if they're not really
Possessive?
Thank you, that's
sorry.
the word. Yeah, I was like, wait, it's not. So he tries. So she goes. I think she goes to make I guess Kyle knocks him over again or something, and like, anyways, one of them like picks him up or like slams him into the thing or something, and he gets a shot off that doesn't hit either one of them directly, and Kelly manages tackling him to the floor, and he kind of makes a grab, like tries to grab her hair to like keep her from like closing in on him or whatever, but he knows she's like way stronger than him, and he's like, I'm not going to be able to hold her off for long, like there's no question she's going to be able to overpower me. And then her gross, she drools all over him, and it's kind of bad. First, like, drips on his face, and he starts, but then it's, like, in my mouth. I'm just, like, I have a particular thing about, like, spit and stuff like that, too. I'm like, that is just, like, so gross. But not in the, right, even the flecks of spit hitting his face is kind of like, ew, but the fact that it, like, then he's, like, drool, like, falls in his mouth,
into his mouth,
to me is just, like, ugh, I just don't like that depiction, nasty, nasty, nasty.
It's not pleasant. No.
It's not pleasant. So point being is it starts taking effect.
Or is it?
Well, it becomes, but yeah, it's one of those things. It's like...
Luckily, his fire spell veered super wildly. Cuts half the building in half.
Yeah, because he's going down, and he's going down fast.
Cuts the building in half.
Yeah, because that narcotic effect starts taking, and he's like, oh, okay, what? And he really starts succumbing. Yeah, like really quickly. And, like, he like, barely, like, for a moment, he's like, no. Okay, yeah, fine, right? So, yeah, so she's about to get right in there, and he's like, it's all good. And then all of a sudden, yeah, the ceiling, the wall starts cracking and falling down, and that last bit of sunlight is left, and he tries to, because otherwise, yeah, that would have been the end of Dresden right there, because he was, like, so... doped up so quickly.
Right.
You know, that he, like, yeah, would have done anything, and happily so.
I do have to laugh a little bit at Kyle and Kelly. They do make their escape, but Kyle has, I'll get you, yet gadget.
yeah, I'll get you next time. But yeah, so she screams, getting half, like, sizzled or whatever, and then Kyle, like, jumps in the van and starts it off and, like, grabs her on the way by, which... Actually, how does he do that? Does he haul her up and then drive away? I sort of had it pictured like he drives by and grabs her, but I'm like, he couldn't haul her in through the side door if he was driving.
Yeah, no, he hauls her, he grabs her and shoves her in the back of the van.
Shoves her in the van, and then he hops around and takes off. Okay. So yeah, so not quite as the... Yeah, so off they go. Wizard, you'll pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dresden has enough sense to go home while he's drugged.
Yeah.
Well, sort of.
He's like, damn, I'm kind of hard on buildings. So we know he, like, burned down Victor's place.
Doesn't call for a designated driver.
Not at all.
No. Well, again, he's already so loopy that I
irresponsible.
guess completely. Well, he doesn't know that he's not with it, right? But at least it sounds like he went too slow, because he says he has, like, visions of cars whizzing past him, so hopefully that just means he just kind of turtled it all, which is still not good, but better than, I guess, creating around wildly, but basically, yeah, that's it. He's getting dark, the vampires come out, he has enough to think about going home, and as he starts to go, the sun completely sinks, and night falls, and everything that's in the night comes out to play. Waha!
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at patreon.com/freeflowrambling. Chapter 17. Dresden makes it to the safety of his apartment. He attempts to manage with the narcotic in his system, but eventually succumbs to sleep and to dreams. Dresden's dreams quickly turn into a nightmare, but this nightmare is very real. Bob manages to wake Dresden with the help of Mister.
So he makes it home, driving not responsibly.
Yes, like a turtle. Turtle.
Don't make out with vampires and drive, people.
This chapter is very, like, I didn't get it the first time I ever read this book. As you realize the rest of the story and come back to this chapter, I found this to be a lot more intense on, like, second and third rereads. Just, like, I don't know, like...
The way it just melds into the dream. And
Yeah,
stuff
like, I don't know,
before you
like, it just
realize
seems like, you know, you don't really understand the stakes the first time you're here, and then once you learn more about the world later on, you come back to this and you're like, oh, fuck, bro.
Yeah.
That was a rough night.
Right?
And even, like, Harry begins to freak out after the events of this chapter. Like, he's clearly upset about what's about to happen, right?
So we assume to be upset, but you're right. It takes a little bit more
But-
before you sort of get the full effect. Like, it really sinks in the... Kind of like Harry wanting to run after this thing, and Bob is like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
We're like, I don't understand. Why is Harry freaking out so bad?
Well, I just feel like, you know, like, it seemed like not that it wasn't, you know, high stakes or it wasn't bad or anything, but I think, like, at the time that it happened, you're like, all right, it's just one more plot device, one more problem. But I think, you know, trying to look at this and, like, think now as it goes in future books and how this potentially affected him going on out
even
here,
just
right?
by the end of the book, you go back and are like, but definitely, yeah,
Subsequently is just very much like, oh shit, like, there was some potentially
there's some crazy
lasting problems from this that
shit going on, and yeah,
maybe, you know.
Even if we look back onto Mickey, the psychological damage, how he described it as, like, he's going to be going through PTSD from this.
Yeah.
And he basically goes through the exact same experience without the fall. Like, he gets a chunk taken out of his psyche.
Even to an extent, I recall the blowback, the aftermath of Murphy, which we'll get to. But I like it just for me, like, it never really like clicked the same way for Harry. But then reading this chapter again, I'm like, oh, dude, like, you have issues right now, like that. I just kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just kind of was like, I don't know, main character, they're fine, you know, move on. Like, everyone else gets hurt, but he's fine. But like, now reading the chapter again this time, I was just like, fuck.
I suppose there's also, and we're sort of jumping to the end of the chapter here, but
Yeah.
I suppose there's a little bit too of, it's still traumatic, but at least Harry knows what's going, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I guess, maybe the difference between like a child and an adult. As an adult, I'm like, you still might have a freaky experience, but you've got logic and experience and rationale to know, like, why your car skidded and went sideways, and if you're lucky, you know how to get it back on, and right? Whereas a kid is just like, I don't understand why this is happening, I don't know how to fix it, right? It makes it scary on a whole other level and traumatic in a different way. So I just kind of took it a little bit that way,
But he does take, like, a psychological...
he definitely takes a psychological
wound.
beating, but at least, you know, again, Harry knows and believes in the supernatural world and know these things are possible, and when Bob explains it, Tim can understand a little bit of what happened, right? So, but yeah, it doesn't, not to say that Harry doesn't properly take care of himself afterwards, and, you know, good at taking care of everybody else, not himself.
So anyways, we start off with a very, you know, weird piece together timeline dream effect.
He tries, this is the thing, is that he gets back and he tries. He manages to block it out for a while. Like, we see that he does have some defenses.
Yeah, he's got quite a bit of mental fortitude to be able to do that against a narcotic.
Well, yeah, and like he says, you know, he's like, I'd learned to block out pain. He's like, when necessary. He's like, studying under Justin, it basically was a necessity, right? So it's like, Justin was very hard, and it's like, you learn this or you suffer. So he learned how to block out, right? So he's like, yeah, it's not as easy to do as pleasure, because normally that's the part, you know? But again, right, and he succeeds for a little while and manages to push it aside, but then just as more of it, you know, as it just gets more and more through his bloodstream or whatever, you know, I don't know if it's like a concentration thing that just more of it is seeping in, or whether it's a lengthy thing that just, the longer it's there, the easier it wears him down, I don't know, but yeah, he really does try for a while and succeeds, and then he just conked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Pitcher does a good job, though, of just the sort of disorientation, stumbling around, and, like, not necessarily, like, he's not writing it cut off, but at the same time, Harry's kind of jumping a little bit from action to thought to, you know, like,
gives you a little bit of him, getting her looking in the mirror, and then he's in bed, and then, exactly, it gives you enough of that sense, too.
Just enough details
to
about
be
the
there
cat.
with him, and right, it's like, okay, the cat was home when he got back and he let him in, but he wasn't really.
And he throws out another law of magic was broken. If Kelly had succeeded anyways, she would have been breaking a law of magic, which is not something that I thought the vampires were upheld to.
Yeah,
Like, I thought it was only the humans that aren't supposed to do that. That's just or vampire
Well-
nature, so they're allowed to do it. But Harry is, which again, it could just be him drugged out, but he's like, she could have gotten into my head if she'd bitten me. Usual mind-controlled enchantment, breaking one of the laws of magic. Which is like,
I missed that part.
yeah, which is like, is that just like him being a little bit fucked up that he's just like, you can't do that, it's against the rules, and forgetting that vampires don't have to follow
Or
the
could
white
have used
courts?
him as a weapon.
Or potentially to that, or is it like actually like vampires are maybe a little bit beholden, maybe through the unsealed? I don't really know, but he's throwing it out there. He's like, oh, you can't mind control people. It came really close, and it's just like, what, buddy?
Yeah. I don't. That is a good question. I don't know how. Because it's sort of, creating that link between victim and whatever. Like, that sort of makes sense. But maybe again, if they cross that line to humans and things, because vampires are potentially born of immortals and that. Maybe it's part of the crossover there that vampires are sort of more closely related to human beings than like.
But the thing
straight up
is that like
fairies
the
or
white
something.
court can't exist at all if that's a rule against vampires. Like,
Well,
that's just the thing. Is like, did like Jim Butcher change his mind on who the rules affected, or did
left that-
it's just a Harry being drugged out and just being
Yeah.
like, you can't do that. That's not fair.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
Right.
you can't rob me. That's against the law. Oh my God, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll stop robbing you. It could be, or is it?
no, I'm from Australia. We're allowed to be criminals there.
Or I wonder if it's not actually a law that's being broken, but they have the potential of controlling him to break a law of the.
Making him-
making him then do it.
Yeah.
It's not terribly clear, but
Well, I was gonna say
Neither
he's
is
like
his
using
thinking.
mind control.
Which is the nice thing
enchantment.
about this chapter is you can put it all into Harry being drugged up and dumb.
But I was gonna say maybe this is slightly different. Like the saliva is sort of that's just its inherent natural properties. Whereas if you get that link, maybe that's what he's saying could actually give them a way to fully control you, which is against. Whereas with the white court, again, that sort of psychic power is more just their sort of inherent ability to make you want to, right? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
No, because it would still be inherent of the vampires. Like, it's still just like a part of who they are, right? Like, they don't control. It's not like a magic spell they're casting. It's her saliva.
I know, well, that's what he says.
It's
He
her
says,
biting.
But this is what I mean, like maybe, because he calls it a mind control enchantment. So maybe, like, biting, you can get a link, and they can kind of, like, seek you out and find you. But maybe that would make you more susceptible to them, like, actually breaking into your mind and then causing you, as opposed to just sort of a vague, like, hey, you want to come here? Like, I don't know.
I'm sort of taking this as he still doesn't know the full extent of vampire powers. So I think he's maybe just guessing.
There is
Because he's
also
like,
that,
I
too.
don't know
He's-
what
he's
happens.
not
If she
actually-
bit me, anything could have happened.
That's
I don't
actually
know.
super fair.
That is that. Yeah, I was gonna say that again. As the story goes, we learn more about the vampire, so we're starting from a place of knowledge. But at this point, you're right.
Harry doesn't know shit.
Harry, well, yeah, he just again knows the basics, right? He does not
And he-
know nearly as much about. Definitely doesn't know all the
I'm
intricate
new in
details.
town.
right?
And he picked up his knowledge just from the first visit
Yeah.
with Bianca. Not.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, Tansenn.
All right.
Woo! You get that one?
Yeah. Not that it's
And if you disagree, don't join our Discord.
It's okay. You could disagree with me.
absolutely.
Don't make us watch Tansenn cry again. No.
It's okay. There's no cameras on Discord. Okay, so he goes through all this, eventually gives in, starts to dream, and he just goes back over his dream of what happened when they initially busted this guy a couple months ago that none of us thought was really that important until it starts becoming more important in this chapter and onwards.
So yes, Harry dreams of the sting on the sorcerer Kravos.
Kravos. Actually, even before that, he's thinking about Lydia again. I thought this was a really specific point for him that I'm like, because when he goes there, he's like, oh, I saw her in the truck and I felt her hand and she was still alive. And now, like, in his drugged up state, he's going back and he's like, what was her heartbeat? 60. Her heartbeat was 60. I'm like, did you seriously stop and take later? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's a standard thing. Maybe when people legitimately feel people's heartbeats, they, like, check it for what it should be. I'm lucky if I can find a pulse on...
But I wouldn't know what a human's heartbeat is supposed to be.
But I don't-
He's like, oh yeah, that would have been about normal. And I'm like, I would not have known that. And like, I don't know anything about that. And also like, I wouldn't recall it an hour later. Like, if I felt your pulse right now,
know,
and then
so
I went
he's
home,
all,
and I'm like,
drugged up and trying to, like, block everything out, and he starts thinking, and I'm like, you barely know what yours is, and you can, like, remember back to what Lydia's was. I'm like, yes, that's great that we know that she was alive and well, but I was like, I already assumed that when you said she's not dead.
yeah, well,
I was like, okay, she's...
it seems more just like drugged up hairy thoughts. It's like, all right,
Maybe
dude.
just random spiraling, focusing too much on, but I know, it was just
Well, it's
kind of
almost like when you, like, want to be a detective about something, like, when we're trying to do this podcast, I'm like, what does it mean? And it's like, it doesn't matter, shut the fuck up and
Sometimes a
move on,
cigar is
right?
just a cigar.
And Harry, he's just like, what is it? Pulse, I should think about the pulse, that's gotta be important. You're like, buddy.
See, and I thought that the more important part was the questioning itself. That it was he's
Am I okay? Are you okay? Are we all okay? What's life?
like what do they have to do? What's the link between?
Yeah, and that stuff definitely he goes into more.
Kyle,
Lydia
Kelly, and
Malone.
Lydia.
He's like, yeah, he's like, okay, she's been normal, but she was like laying there, and then Kyle and Kelly were there, and then
What do they have to do with the vampires?
yeah, I get that, but it was just the fact that sort of specific detail that I was like, it wasn't even because if he just kind of glossed over that and gone to, if he'd like, okay, she picked up a heartbeat, and then why is she there? But it was just the fact that I was like, he specifically knew like what her heartbeat was, and like I say, remembered it like
He's a weirdo.
through all of this. It was just kind of funny. But yeah, starts trying to put it together and figure out why Malone and Lydia are connected, and that doesn't make sense, and all about the nightmare, and more questions, and why are the vampires, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and how did they get through the threshold, and how did she get through the threshold, and did he attack her with my talisman or not, and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's where he starts, getting through, and finally,
He's trying to pin it on Bianca. He keeps trying to say, he's like, all right, if Kyle and Kelly are involved, then Bianca has to be involved.
Yeah, because
it's just gotta be Bianca.
she's the lackey. They're
And
her lackeys, which doesn't
if I
make
need
sense.
to connect to Lydia at all, then it's gotta be through Bianca. So why does Bianca want Lydia? And he's like throwing out things like this. And then he's like, all right, now how do I connect the nightmare to Bianca? And he's like trying to do all this stuff, but a little bit later on in the chapter, it seems like he's just like completely given up the Bianca thing. And then Bob is like, what about Bianca? He's like, yeah, maybe. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, you were the one who was like, you went on for like 3 paragraphs of how it all looked at Bianca. And then like
Now
later
you're
on,
like,
he's like, I just don't get how these people
are connected.
And Bob's like, how about Bianca? And he's like, Bianca. And it's like, what? Dude.
Maybe.
But
I don't
anyways.
know. But yeah, he goes and there. So it finds out that, him and Michael, along with S.I., had gone to take down Kravos, who was doing all this ritual, serial killing magic stuff. And he had a bunch of lackeys of his own or whatever. So specifically, we get that Stallings and Rudolph and Malone are there accompanying Murphy and Michael and Harry. Probably a couple of other random nameless SI people. But all of those guys are there. And they're basically like, okay, we're going to round up the followers because they're
like every fantasy novel, you 3 cops can have a name when the first 3 cops die. Well, okay, so like I just recently read Dune. I'm in the middle of Promise of Blood right now. There was another one I was reading now. I can't think of what it is, but like these particular books give you so many names and so many places, and I'm just like, what the fuck are we even talking about? Like, how dare you give 8 characters a name that starts with F? Like,
You need a chart
there's
to like
26
keep track.
letters in the alphabet. Get a new
Everybody
letter for
gets it.
everyone so I can tell someone apart. And they'll have like father and son and grandfather all start with the name T. And I'm like, they're all the same person to me. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck these people are. It's like the most infuriating thing ever. So I like that, Jim Butcher's like, no, you have to do something cool to get a name, idiot.
Want to come along to my ADD session?
No, I really don't like it when authors give too many names and places because I'm
Yeah.
like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? I don't give a fuck about Brian.
There is, and I was going to
Do something cool, Brian, and then I'll care.
And then I'll care. I was gonna say that is one thing. Like I do obviously like a lot of like fantasy and things like that too. But I'm like, it does get harder when you start getting a lot of the really like foreign type, like especially
Yeah,
they
fantasy
love
names.
they love to skip a lot of like vowels and consonants and throw like hyphens and do
right.
and apostrophes and stuff like that. I mean, right? So it's just again when I'm like, it's not even just like human foreign. It's completely. And then when you get like a ton of names like that, that's when I start getting frustrated and I'm just like, I can't remember. This isn't like again. I'm like, if I had to remember George and Sally and even like, some of the more slightly exotic names or something, I'm like, okay, if they're the least bit, pronounceable or from the earthly realm, then I can probably figure this out and go with it. But yeah, some of this super crazy,
Yeah, it gets
So,
real annoying.
thanks, Butcher, for not having too many of those.
Yeah.
Mostly you pull from existing entities that we can look up their names and figure out if it's Charbidus or Crubdus.
Well, even then, and there's times when, like, he uses, like, I've seen there's times when he's gone to get, like, a new character or something, and he's like, wait, I already have someone who does this. Like, I'll just bring him back. Like, even Murphy wasn't supposed to be that reoccurring, and he's like, well, I already fucking have a cop. Like, I'll just use Murphy again.
Yeah,
Right? And same with Butters. Butters wasn't supposed to be reoccurring. He's like, I already fucking have an Emmy, like, or MD or whatever the fuck Butters is, right?
Right.
He's like, I don't need to bring in a new one. Like, I've already got one, right? So I like it that Butcher does that, because then it's like you can actually have something meaningful in a past with these characters.
Yes.
Right? Whereas, like, sometimes I find, like, authors is just like, we go to a new society every single chapter, and you meet 87 people.
Yeah.
And you're just expected to remember that forever. And I'm like, you die.
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say at least when this throws back, then eventually you can go, oh, I do remember that person, as opposed to like, yeah,
Which is why I
When you
will
get to-
forever wait for Faith Astor to come back in the books. Because Jim Butcher recycles everyone.
there you go.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Is there a difference between warlocks and sorcerers?
Technically speaking, the White Council refers to warlocks as gone down a bad path.
but that's how he refers to sorcerers.
So then no.
Okay, my take on it, and I did not, look this up in preparation for this question, so I may change my opinion, or somebody else may correct me. Sorcerers, it sounds like Harry uses the term sort of for one-trick ponies. So, Kravos just did his creepy, culty, serial killing stuff. And Shadow Man, Victor Sells, just did his, like, creepy, culty sex orgies and drug ring. Whereas Warlocks, to me, are pretty much, they're on par. Like, anybody in the White, like, if you've succeeded to the White Council and become a full-fledged member of Wizardry, and you can, it's like...
All right, I just Googled it.
No, shut up! I'm finishing my explanation, and then we can find out. It's kind of
Sure,
like,
let's waste time on this.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's like the difference between, like, I don't know, like a university degree and like a trades. So like an electrician learns how to be an electrician and learns how to be a really good electrician. Whereas like university, you have to have like your science and your math and your English, and right, you have to have like so many requirements in order to fulfill a degree. No matter like what you take, you still have to have other parts of it, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of what a wizard is. So a warlock is just a wizard who's like, well, I know how to do everything now. I'm going to go out and do bad shit because I no longer care, or I think we've gone on the wrong path of this. Whereas a sorcerer basically just learns how to do like that one bad thing or whatever, right? So they're not using their powers for good, but they're not as edgy. They don't know how to do as much.
Okay. All right, so Jess.
How does that stand up to what you found?
Just about perfect.
Yes!
Woohoo!
So in Blood Rights, Murphy asks for the difference, and he explains it as such. Kind of an industry term. Plenty of people can do a little magic, small-time stuff, but sometimes the small-timers practice up or tap into some kind of power source and get enough ability to be dangerous. A sorcerer is someone who can do some serious violence with magic, like the Shadow Man or Kravos. Wizard means...
Not like I read these books before.
Wizard means that you can do sorcery if you need to, but it also means that you can do a lot of other things too. A wizard's power isn't limited to blowing things up or calling up demons. A good wizard can adapt his magic in almost any way he can imagine, which can be the problem. Warlocks are basically dark wizards.
Okay,
So
Sweet.
yeah, Shadow Man or sorcerers are basically one-trick ponies.
cool. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry, I just assumed you were talking to me.
Thank you both for that.
Yeah, I get credit too.
Thank you for confirming my hypothesis, which I probably know from reading the books 10,000 times and having heard Harry explain it. But
Yeah.
But Jim Butcher isn't here, so you don't have to claim plagiarism. I knew it myself.
I did pull it up before you got the confirmation. All right.
So back to the dream.
Wait, real quick. A Reddit will like offer you like similar questions to the one you Googled, and the suggested one was: are the other wizards really lazy, or is Dresden just uber powerful on a level none of the others have achieved? I just started
That's
the
a
series.
good
Why don't the
question.
rest of them do anything? Well, sir.
Answer that person back and tell them to tune in.
They asked the question 7 years ago. I don't think they care anymore.
Who knows? Maybe they're looking for a new podcast to listen
And they
to.
figured it out by now.
That's awesome. That is a really good question.
Are the other wizards just really lazy?
That's funny.
Harry would say yes.
Harry would agree.
Yeah.
So I love the verbal takedown that Michael gives Rudolph in the dream.
Yeah.
Demon, breathed Rudolph. Jesus, can you believe this shit? Jesus did believe in demons. It's subtle, but it's definitely
and it's very true, though. He's like, Jesus, do you believe this shit? And he's like, yes, actually.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. And then he's just like, basically, he's like, don't get too close to it. He's like, don't shoot at it or leave it to me. If it gets past me, throw your holy water and run. He's like, do not. And Harry's like, yeah, that's pretty much the plan. He's like, me and Michael will take care of the demon and the sorcerer. You guys just kind of warn us if anything's going down. And yeah, I just love that. Just throw your holy water at them and run away. So they go in and get all the kidlets out. Are you going on something else there?
Right, yeah, no. I mean, in that dream, they do succeed. I kind of wondered, though, if this is this the sting that Rudy ran away from? That it got chicken shit and went, bye!
Yeah, and that does happen in the dream. And I think that's part of why he hasn't been gone after yet. I think Rollins was in there with this too, wasn't he? I'm trying to remember when he says who all. Michael, Malone. Doesn't she say who?
Yes, Rudy's definitely there. Yeah,
She just refers to him as the rest of the
team.
the rest of the team. There's no Rollins mentioned in this book.
So maybe not, because Rollins never gets specific. Not Rollins, Stallings.
Stallings.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't remember reading
Stallings.
but that didn't happen.
Because everybody, right? So Malone was there, and Malone has been attacked, right? And Harry was there, and Harry gets attacked, and he's worried about Murphy, and he's worried about Michael, and Rudy runs away. And as of yet, Rudy has not been. So I was like, maybe Stallings was not up front in this particular, or at least, like you say, in the forefront of what happened, because only those that sort of have named. And so, yeah, so I think this thing definitely is the one where it happened in real life, and thus far up to that point in the dream, that's correct in what happened as well, is that Rudy freaked out, tucked tail, and ran. So, which is part of why, yeah, he still gets all pissy at Dresden, because he's like, everybody else fought it out with this thing. So, yeah, so they basically said, they're going to have all his little cult members or whatever, and SI focuses on getting them all for, I think Harry says it takes them like 90 seconds or something like that. Like, basically, they were right where they were supposed to be.
In and out, boom.
Yeah, rounds them up, takes them out, and then throws them in the van, and they go back in. And once Harry starts doing the magic and calling up the circle and things like that, that's when it starts pinging on Kravos's, like, radar or whatever, right?
So it takes a different turn into a nightmare at that point when he's trying to do the
yeah, he's got his little Ken doll or whatever as his connection, and I hope he's like, Murphy's like, are you sure? Yeah, pretty sure. I think so. Maybe. He's like, maybe. Great. Reasonably sure. But yeah, I like that. So, but yeah, once he starts to do it, then it's like, okay, yeah, makes a connection. So they're like, we're good. But yeah, that's where it starts to diverge, because in real life, Michael had gutted the demon. Harry had, encircled and trapped, magically trapped, whatever.
Yeah.
Blocked his power. But in the dream, it doesn't quite go that way.
And, like, it's an extremely, like they don't normally win
Graphic?
the day this easily.
Oh.
No, like the way he, like, says it, he's like, I, like, pulled him away from his powers. Michael took the demon. Mickey Malone shot out his legs, and Murphy wrestled away the knife. And that was it. Done. Like, everyone had a role, everyone did their part, and it was done. There was
Which
no,
is
like,
probably also part of why I, like, semi-dismiss this thing as being important, because it's like, well, anytime it's important, there's, like, a lot more struggle.
Yeah, right?
It's like, oh, you took this guy out so easy, he's a nobody, which is exactly what Harry was thinking.
Yeah, right? So it was, like, very clean, all in all. But,
Yeah.
obviously, the dream fucks it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody dies this time.
Horribly.
Instead. I mean, really badly.
Yeah, Michael, like, gets his neck snapped. Murphy gets, I think she gets clawed and gutted. Yeah, claws flashed out. Talons are carved through her Kevlar jacket, her shirt, skin, leaving her belly torn. Harry gets, like, chomped and eaten. Malone's is, like, the worst.
That's awful.
That was,
Like,
and he, like, basically fully describes it. That was just, I'm like, oh, okay, we've seen a million times people getting their neck broken and slashed, and I'm like, none of that's pleasant, but we've all been, like, scratched. But yeah, but the blunt end of the gun, like, oh.
Yeah.
But this is when it says that Rudy screamed and ran away.
Yeah.
Not before.
That's why I was wondering. But he starts the book off saying that the most recent thing that they had done, Rudy had run off. So I assumed that it was this one, especially since he's saying, in this dream.
And again, since other things are kind of going sideways, again, this might not have been, like, because it does say, the whole reason Malone is there is he does say Malone left the force short. That was his last one because he'd been injured and stuff like that. So he's gonna, there could have been some other
it wasn't quite as
injury or moment that I mean, again, right? It's his dream is altering slightly. There could have been something else that happened in the moment that still made Rudy.
Or Harry's recollection.
Or it's just whatever.
Something else is happening and Harry's not remembering correctly.
This was the other thing, I think, because we always talk about having his little, like, lapel pin or something for Bob, too. Because I think either in the end of this chapter or the next one when they're talking a little bit, he does say something about, like, Harry coming in and, like, mumbling, and I'm like, is that how Bob got all the... Because, again, Harry was pretty drugged out, so either when he comes back to it, did he remember enough of it to record this? Or did Bob just fill all that from all, like, the muttering? Because he's like, you were, like, wandering around, like, talking to yourself like a madman and stuff like that. I'm like, did he just pull out the bits of Harry's conversation and be like, okay, this is what you must have been talking about at the time? And because we get all of, like, what Harry was thinking until he passed out from the drugs. So I was like, well, the only way we would know that is either you recalled once you sobered up and it did come back to you, these bits and pieces, or again... You were saying more of this out loud, and Bob just took note of all of it to fill in the blanks afterwards, because otherwise this is like someone dying in their sleep. Well, how did you know what they were dreaming about? Anyways, so really gross. Don't like how Malone goes down. Don't like it at all. And then, Harry's like, what the hell is going on? And goes out to push his power and finds out that now things are reversed. Now he's blocked off, and Kravos comes after him and feeds him to the demon, and... So he runs away. So Harry tries to get back into stopping him, and his circle doesn't work, and Kravos comes at him, and he tries to, like, fire his fire at him, and that doesn't work, and he starts realizing, he's like, wait, this is a dream, right? He's like, this isn't what happened, like, we beat him the first time, this all went, none of this happened, my friends aren't dying, but it's too late. I mean, he says, having not prepared ahead of time, because he's like, normally, again, wizardly and all this kind of stuff, he's like, I can manipulate my own dreams if I need to, but wasn't prepared for this, was already drugged up, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, yeah, this is a dream, this isn't the way it happened, and the demon he's like, oh, that was then, and I'm just gonna kill you now, like, basically chomps into him.
The only thing that saves him is a certain grey tabby scratches him awake.
So now we get our little asterisks, and he's still screaming, but he's in his bedroom. And he's all curled up, and like on the other side, like he's not in bed anymore. He's like on the far side of his room, which, let's face it, is probably like 2 feet from his bed, because he keeps saying what a tiny room it is. But what constitutes for the far side of his room? And Mr. has come up and like scratched him across the nose or whatever, and he'd been puking, and he like Mr. kind of comes over and checks him out. And then, like, just to make sure, just gives him, like, another swat on the cheek. So, like, it's, like, almost judiciously. But, he starts coming back to himself then. And he is freaked the fuck out. So he's got the rest of the venom, sort of course, he's coming down from that high. He's got this terrifying nightmare where he and his friends all were killed horribly. He feels, like, physically like weak and helpless and everything, so he crawls into his ring. He doesn't have a blanket or anything, but he goes down to his lap and he pulls up a magic circle to block everything out, because he just can't deal with anything.
Which is so sad.
Which is so sad and so sweet. And I mean, at least there's that. Fine, there's only so much. I mean, hopefully you're blocked from the physical world because you are in your house with your door locked. Now you're trying to block out as much spiritual as you can.
This reminds me of a kid hiding in a closet.
Literally, that's literally what he does. Yeah, he crawls under the bed, but in this case, his bed is a magic circle in his sub-basement, because under the bed is not far enough away. The monsters can get him there. So and it takes him a while, and he just kind of figures he's shaken from the whole thing, and then we sort of assume that too, that it takes him a minute to be able to pull this together and get it up. But then we find out that... Bob is still inhabiting Mr.
Yeah.
But here's where Bob gets to, I guess, because Harry's like, you can leave for the purpose of this mission, which usually means if you're back, the second they walk through the door, Bob should have back to his skull. But apparently he didn't. Apparently because
He
Harry
came
was
home
all
at the same time.
Yeah, we know that. But I mean, just within the fines, like sometimes like Bob is just like auto control. Like, he doesn't have a choice. It's like the genie in the lamp. Like when Jafar made the lamp just sucked him in. He didn't have a choice about going into the lamp. Right? I always sort of feel like it's like that. He's like, you have permission to leave for this, and as soon as that's over,
Did Jafar make the lamp?
Jafar didn't make the lamp. Jafar wished to be a genie, and then a lamp appeared, and then it sucked him into it. Thank you very much. You know what I was getting at.
I don't like Aladdin, so I'm not really aware of the whole plot.
Oh my gosh. Aladdin was good too.
It's not good music. I just don't care about it.
Good snarky
I know.
dialogue in that. But anyways, but apparently coming back and seeing that Harry was completely sort of out of his skull, whatever, Bob decided to not
Realized that
immediately
something was
vacate
wrong.
Yeah, he kind of stuck around to help keep an eye on him because, you know.
Oh, but also Bob.
Bob, yeah, well, that's what I mean. We can all say, Mr. checks out. We all know our pets. Like we were, saying the other, was I fake crying or something like that no, maybe I was actually really upset the other day, but I was talking to me, and anyways, the dog comes over.
Me? Really upset?
I
must have been fake.
Well, I don't usually get but yes, anyways, point is the dog was like coming over and like laying her head in my lap and stuff like that, right? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, do you know? I'm like, right. But again, there's a limit to that. There's only so much, and even cats being all like familiar to wizards. But I'm like, I do like that. Yeah, Bob sort of knew enough that like Bob can't act on his own because he doesn't have a physical body. And while Mr. might kind of be aware there's something up, Mr.'s not actually. So, that Bob was like, I'm just gonna hang out in the cat for a little while longer. And then if I need to, right, and we discovered that before he actually, like, clawed him and woke him up, like he'd been sort of trying before, and stuff like that. And it was like, it's kind of cool that even though he had the parameters that were set, he obviously had a little bit of autonomy that he was able to be like, yeah, I'm not going back right away. I'm just going to wait until I know it's cool. And good thing.
Yeah. We learned that something was trying to eat Harry.
Yeah.
Not trying.
He just
did.
Yeah.
Did eat Harry.
Curls up in his circle.
Took a chomp.
Yeah.
But, like, it's really, like, I don't know, chilling, if Bob is just like, I'm sorry, Harry.
Visceral.
I think I know what tried to eat you.
Yeah. That's like, what?
EBGBs.
Well, right? Because he's like, he's like, Harry, because like literally, he goes in a circle and he like curls up and starts like bawling some more. So he's got to wait a while to come down from that, and then Bob's finally like, Harry, are you okay? Like, are you with us? And he's like, I think so. And then and he's like, I saw it. I think I know what went after Malone and the others, right? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, I think I know what tried to eat you. It's just like that. It's so fucking creepy.
So creepy.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
No. But kind of an interesting concept, too, that with the whole spirit thing, that even though it was inside Harry's dreams, that Bob was still able to get a look at it beyond the hole.
Right.
I gotta get me one of them. I need a Bob.
This concludes our episode 8.8, Dream a Little Dream. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnally's.ca. There we have links to our other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive and to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Ponder by it at your own risk.